Welcome everyone to our webinar today on CMMC acceleration with CyberDome and Cyber Interceptor.
We know that many defense contractors are rushing to meet the November CMMC Phase 2 compliance deadline. And in this webinar, we're going to discuss how you can accelerate the implementation of two complex controls in as little as 90 minutes with Celerium's Cyber Interceptor solution.
So let's just jump in. I'm Tommy McDowell. In the past, I've been an auditor with various NIST 853 compliance programs and those that are tailored for the classified world. And I moved on as a threat intel executive with Mandiant and then at the retail ISAC before I moved here to Celerium. Vince, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I started my career as an Air Force communications officer. I had the opportunity to serve as the Chief Information Security Officer at the White House. I spent some time at the Department of Homeland Security in what is now called CISA, doing some of the national cybersecurity work there, working on some of the national information sharing programs and cybersecurity for critical infrastructure and .gov. And I'm now the Chief Strategy Officer for Celerium and also serve as the Chief Information Security Officer.
And I want to introduce our special guest, Mace from TES Consultants. Why don't you introduce yourself to us for us?
Thanks, Tommy. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. Mace Adger here. I got my start in the late 90s at UNet doing internet abuse investigations, and from there morphed into kind of more of a technical role on the contractor side, federal contractor for 15 years. Most notably, I managed the National Vulnerability Database as well. And right now, I kind of serve at the intersection of all of those compliance frameworks and the helping CSPs kind of enter that market. Nice to be here.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Glad you're here. Hey, Vince, tell us a little bit about Celerium's background.
Sure. Yeah, Celerium has been in cybersecurity for more than 18 years. As a company, we've been focusing on state and local government, healthcare, and also the defense industrial base. Back in 2022, almost 4 years ago, Celerium acquired my company, Dark-Cubed, which had been and is today, through Celerium, providing the Department of Defense, Department of War, with a cybersecurity solution they provide to defense contractors. This Celerium solution is known within DICE as DICE Cubed, DICE with a superscript 3. And all of this work has enabled the foundation of these new solutions that Celerium is announcing. So the DIV CyberDome family is a kind of a family of products, and within that is the Cyber Interceptor, which is what we're going to focus on today. Now, I do want to make sure everybody knows that Celerium, we don't provide any CMMC consulting, assessment work. We're not an RPO, we're not a C3PO, we're not an MSP, we're not an MSSP. We are very laser focused on providing cybersecurity technology solutions that run in the cloud and which are specifically designed for those small and mid-sized defense contractors that don't have the budget, time, or security stack of the larger contractors.
Yes, and of course the TES Consultants, they provide a lot of those services. So Mason, why don't you expand and tell us a little bit more about what it is you guys do?
Yeah, sure, of course. TES Consultants has been in business for about 8 years. We're a small woman-owned cybersecurity company. We're a certified C3PAO, so we do a lot of these CMMC assessments. But on the other side of that, we also build and manage highly complex environments for customers to run the regulated workload. So we kind of see both sides of that coin, from the assessment piece as well as that consulting piece. So we understand what goes into both sides of that. We're also a defense prime contractor. So we understand what is at stake with these new CMMC requirements.
Very good. Thank you. And before we dive in, just a reminder, you can ask questions at any time. There's a Q&A button at the bottom on the Zoom balance on the bottom of the screen here, or you can do them in chat, and we'll address those at the end of the session. So, Mace, why don't we kick it off by talking about this November implementation rush and ways we can accelerate it.
Yes, November is very important. CMMC is rolling out in phases, right? So last year it was phase 1 for CMMC Level 1. This year it's Level 2. 2027 will be Level 3. So what that means is that you're going to start seeing a lot more CMMC verbiage and RFPs that are being put out by the DoD. So that means by the time of contract award or even in order to bid on proposals, you are going to have that CMMC Level 2 certificate. Excuse me. And also we're seeing this requirement trickling down from the primes down to the subs. So we are seeing, emails from larger primes mandating deadlines for their subs that are way before November. We're seeing some as early as July, that if they don't have these CMMC level 2 certificates, they are off the team. So it is becoming kind of a rush for everyone to get certified. But there's issues in that as well. There's a backlog. There's not enough C3PAOs or CCAs, those individuals that do the assessments, to actually meet all of the demand. But it's also paired with organizations not actually being ready. Less than 1% of all of the organizations that need to have this requirement are actually ready and entering into this ecosystem. So I think it's a combination of lack of assessors as well as just lack of knowledge and the capacity to be able to satisfy a lot of these controls.
Yeah. And of course, Mace, your company has C3PAOs
Yep.
and you're an RPO. So you're very much engaged with the accreditation body. So give us a perspective on your interaction with them. And I believe they have monthly meetings with a lot of updates. So what can you
Yeah.
share with us about that?
Yeah, of course. So as a C3PO, we are able to sit in on a weekly meeting with the cyber ARB, and we are learning about changes that are being proposed to this ecosystem, as it unfolds. And one of those changes is the concept of a significant change. That doesn't exist right now in CMMC. So if that environment changes, over the course of that 3-year life cycle of the level 2 certificate, then that environment is no longer valid. So there's a lot of those concepts that are being proposed. So being part of those and talking to your C3PO to understand how this program is shaping is vital. Another part of that is there are monthly town hall meetings that are open to everyone. So anyone that's part of the defense industrial base, or if you're just curious about CMMC, if you go to the Cyber AB's website, there's a monthly town hall meeting. You can join and learn about all of the new organizations, the changes that are occurring in the ecosystem, and they also keep a catalog of all of the previous month's town halls as well. So I would highly recommend everyone who wants to know more about this to attend the town halls.
No, good. Thank you very much. And Vince, two of those 110 controls are covered by Cyber Interceptor. So what can you tell us about those?
Yeah. So Tommy, CMMC Level 2 has 110 controls. And most contractors are trying to focus on all of them: patching, access control, incident response, the full list. We are focused very precisely on 2 controls. Not because the others don't matter, but because these 2 are the ones that most small and mid-sized contractors struggle to demonstrate. They're the ones that the assessors are going to dig into the hardest. And it's the one where we have unique experience given what we've been doing with the DoD for the last 8 years. The first is 3.13.1 boundary protection. This requirement is straightforward on paper. You're monitoring and controlling and protecting communications at your external boundaries and key internal boundaries. But when an assessor walks in, they're not just checking the box. They are asking 8 specific questions. Is the boundary defined? Are the communications being monitored at the external boundary? At key internal boundaries? Are they being controlled? Are they being protected? And that's 8 places where you can come up short, and where most contractors that are working with CMMC don't have automated evidence collection that any of this is actually happening. The second one we're focused on here is 3.14.6 system monitoring. This is about monitoring your systems, including inbound and outbound traffic, to detect attacks and indicators of potential attacks. There are 3 sub-requirements here. Is the system being monitored? Is the inbound traffic being monitored? Is the outbound traffic being monitored? Again, it's easy to say, yep, we've got technology in place, but it's really hard to prove this when somebody's asking for documentation of an ongoing practice. So what DIB CyberDome and Cyber Interceptor does is address both simultaneously and generate the audit-ready evidence to back it up. Not reports that you assemble the day before an assessment in a hurry, but evidence captured continuously from day one. And just pause here for a second, Mace. Do you have any thoughts on these controls and the importance of them?
Yeah, I mean, from an honors perspective, the evidence bar for these 2 are very high. It's not going to be enough to show that a tool is just running or that you have a firewall rule list in place. There's a lot more that are going to be required. Just like you mentioned, it's more than just monitoring. You have to take action on all of those results and those IOCs that you're seeing. So yeah, I think there's a heavy weight for those controls. As we know, they're assigned 5 points each, And if any one of those are failed during the audit, the assessment fails. These are not programmable controls that you can fix at a later date.
Very good,
Great.
very good. Yeah, thanks, guys. And before we get in a little bit more into the CMMC acceleration, Vince, can you tell us a little bit more about our solutions?
Yeah, so let me dig a little bit more into the evidence side of this. This is where these two controls get hard in practice, and it's not the technical implementation. Most contractors have a firewall, most have some form of monitoring. The problem is evidence. And so when a C3PO assessor walks in, they're not asking whether your boundary protection is set up. They're asking you to prove that it's been working continuously over time. And that's a different question that most contractors aren't prepared to answer. For 3.13.1, the assessor can examine your hardware, your configuration settings, your system design documentation, your audit logs. They can interview your network administrators. They can test the mechanisms directly. The 8 sub-requirements with multiple assessment methods each. What they're looking for is documented ongoing evidence that the boundary is defined and that communications are actually being monitored, controlled, and protected. Not that you just built it and assumed it was running. And for 3.14.6, the same problem is there, that you need to demonstrate that inbound and outbound traffic monitoring is active, consistent, and producing something that you can actually show. So assessors are looking at your monitoring tools, your documentation, your system configuration, your logs. And the question isn't whether you have a system. The question is whether you can walk them through what it's been doing. And what we're hearing from people who've been through these assessments is that saving reports isn't just enough on its own. The standard that keeps coming up is 3 months of evidence in practice, and that means the evidence needs to exist at the time of the event, not get assembled the week before the assessment. You can't reconstruct it. You either have it or you don't. And that's the gap that DIB CyberDome and Cyber Interceptor closes. So Maze, you've been through these assessments, you've helped people prepare for this. So what are your thoughts on the evidence challenge, and what's your experience here?
Yeah, no, excuse me. I have, quite frankly, to be honest with you, I haven't seen many tools, if any at all, that not only satisfy the controls but provide to you some level of evidence with generation. Just like you mentioned, the assessors are looking for a very specific set of things that you are doing and that you can show them as being done on an ongoing basis. So if the tool itself can provide that for you, I mean, that's a huge benefit in itself, because like you said, a lot of these, especially the smaller defense industrial base members who aren't experts in security, don't have a dedicated team, are able to easily gather this evidence. So yeah, I mean, I think that's huge.
Cool. Now I'll answer your question, Tommy, about a little bit more
Yeah,
detail about the
got you.
product.
Got ahead of you. Go ahead.
Yep. So the CyberDome is the name of the broad family of cyber defense solutions offered by Celerium, and Cyber Interceptor is the first product within that family, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So now what we're going to do is walk through this idea of what does it look like to get this implemented and accelerated. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So on day one, what we're talking about is a very high-speed implementation. And a high speed to us means, 30 to 60 minutes. If it's on-prem, it's 30 minutes. If it's cloud, it's 60, just because there's a lot more complexity for configuring cloud infrastructure. And what's important here is that we don't require any hardware, no appliances, no software, no agents to install. We're not doing deep packet inspection. And this is all implemented using the devices that you already have in place, your on-prem and cloud firewalls, which is why this can be deployed so quickly. So on the boundary monitoring, the monitoring is live as soon as you have Cyber Interceptor configured. That firewall data is being sent near instantaneously to our decision engine in the AWS GovCloud. That traffic is being processed against an integrated stack of commercial and open source threat intelligence feeds. We don't charge you any extra for those threat intelligence feeds, even though these are feeds that some of the largest companies in the world are paying a lot of money for. And this enables the threat scoring of your traffic without requiring any integration into SIM or SOAR or any other things. We're able to provide that real value very quickly. 5 minutes after deployment, you can start seeing these reports with scoring and the other reports that are available. So the bottom line here is this already helps with a major implementation of boundary monitoring. And so does this with the automated continuous monitoring. So on day one, we get this high-speed implementation deployment, as I've said, in 30 minutes and 30 to 60 minutes without any hardware or software. So this is showing you just a quick screenshot here. And this is the source of data threats that are being observed within your environment, when they were first seen, when they were last seen, how many times they've been seen. And there's also a piece here that's highlighted in red around the score. And this is the result of our threat intelligence integration. And the way we're ranking threats is basically high, medium, and low threat. High, medium, and low confidence. So the 8 on here is a high threat, medium confidence. The 9 is a high threat, high confidence, things that you definitely want to block. Next slide. So also on day 1, within a few minutes, we're implementing the boundary protection. And this is an optional piece. You know, I know a lot of people are concerned about turning on automated blocking. And so we separate these two. We let you get comfortable with the monitoring and then enable the blocking and protection capability. The AWS-based decision engine examines threats on each firewall, and it creates an adaptive protection model that's customized for you and for your firewall. These custom and adaptive block lists are re-optimized in the firewall every 15 minutes based on changes in the threat environment during that period. And this means within just a few minutes after deployment, you're now starting to support both the continuous monitoring control and that boundary protection control that are both very complex, automatically without any integrations. Next slide here. And so here's an example of what you'll see in the system very quickly is a summary of of the actual protection measures that are taking, you know, the blocking of threats. We're seeing here a summary of the block threats, average over 30 days, over a period of time. On the table below, you're seeing the threats, you're seeing how many times they've been seen, if there's an amount of data associated with them. And we're also parsing out domains if they exist and can be connected to those IPs. A lot of times, like to a human eye, the ability to say, I know what that domain is, or that domain is or I don't know, really helps accelerate things. But I do need to reinforce this is an automated system. You set these blocking controls and it works without a human having to take action. So, Mace, this is a lot of stuff that happens in day 1. What are your thoughts about this description of day 1?
Man, I think that's awesome. So, and I'll tell you why. It makes me a little bit excited, you know, as an auditor, because we had mentioned there's a lot of data that
Do
you have to
auditors get
gather.
excited?
Yeah, well, we are known to get excited when there's findings, but we're also excited when we can help stop findings. So in this example, it's fantastic that on day 1 you can start to generate some type of data, right? Like you said, the standard for evidence collection is becoming that 3-month standard. FedRAMP, CMMC, they're all looking for not that you just turn the switch on right before the audit, but that this is an ongoing basis, and then you're doing what's expected of you. You know, so yeah, I mean, and the fact that it's no touch, it's huge because a lot of organizations are very reticent to allow an agent or something they don't know kind of get access to your network. So if all this can be done at the firewall level, man, I'm a fan.
Great. So let's jump into day 2. You know, the first day is just getting things set up and configured. On day 2, you're gonna have more ability to see threat traffic summarized by day. You'll have the ability to see a whole day of summary of traffic that has been blocked. And you can spend some time reviewing, maybe 15 to 20 minutes actually reviewing what's happened so you can start to get familiar with how the system's preventing the data. We do recommend doing a review every week. And Maze, I'll ask you, like, why is it important that people do a review every week on a personal level?
Yeah, it's very important. Just because you have a process in place, you have to also prove that you're following that process, right? So if you show an auditor, hey, here is our process for doing these weekly reviews, they're going to come back and ask you, show me. And you have to be able to show them that you're doing it on a weekly basis. So if you have a report, if you have meeting minutes, anything that you can generate, yeah, it fully supports that you're doing this on an ongoing basis and not just a one-off.
Very good. Thanks, guys. So yeah, so of course, one of those goals is to support the cyber interceptor solution that we've been talking about in a fast track way of doing that for those controls, but also how to generate evidence and evidence packs for the auditors. So Vince, any comments on that?
Yeah, and I know this is a area that you love, Tommy, given your background kind of being an auditor. In fact, you are one of the inspirations behind the evidence collection piece here, so I want to kind of tip my hat to you.
Thanks.
The core idea here is simple. You know, the evidence has to exist at the time of the event, not get assembled the week before an assessment. And that's a trap that a lot of contractors are falling into when they're trying to get ready for CMMC Level 2. they have a system running, they assume it's working. Then when the assessor asks them to demonstrate 3 months of documented monitoring activity, they have to scramble and come up with a way to produce it, or they just don't have it. So Cyber Interceptor captures that evidence continuously and automatically from the moment it's deployed. So when assessment time comes, you're not scrambling. What that means practically is that reporting is built into the system. It's not a separate step you have to remember. The evidence maps to specific assessment objectives for those two controls, 3.13.1, 3.14.6, if anybody other than Mace can remember those in their head automatically. More commonly known as boundary protection and system monitoring. And that gets packaged into a format designed for C3PO assessors. There's no manual documentation, no pulling logs together at the last minute. The audit-ready evidence is a byproduct of the system doing its job every day. So Mace, I'll come back to you about how important this evidence collection piece is for passing level 2, and can you pass without it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very critical that you have the exactly what the auditors are looking for, and the auditors are looking for a very specific set of things. Just because you have a screenshot of a firewall is not going to suffice, right? So the fact that these controls require the continuous monitoring kind of approach, and that this product does that, and the rule list, I think you said the sources are updated every 15 minutes, which is definitely pretty close to a real time. It makes my job as an auditor very easy because I don't have to go and dig through a bunch of screenshots trying to find out and associate what firewall is this rule set associated with. This is all done for you. It's always a good idea to keep your auditors happy, and this evidence piece definitely keeps me happy, Vince. So thank you for that.
Hey, I echo that. Yeah, it'd make me very excited. The fact that you could explain that to me and show me how you're doing it, I would be very impressed as an auditor. So Vince,
should I bring you food to keep you happy too? Does that help?
No, not really. Just show me the evidence. That's all I need. So we covered day 1, day 2. So what comes later after running for 30 days? Where are we there?
After 30 days, the system has been implemented. Both monitoring and protection controls are running. You're able to see reports about this and kind of interact with those reports. If you want, at this point, you can generate an initial evidence pack. Typically, people don't go into a level 2 audit blind. They're working with somebody or doing some preparation. So the ability to produce that evidence pack early and make sure that it checks the box and everybody's happy with it is really important, which they will be. And of course, defense contractors will also need to address their responsibilities for each control in terms of policies and procedures. But the Cyber Interceptor can generate a whole bunch of interesting materials. So we can generate the raw and summary examples of the monitoring boundary conditions. We can generate raw and summary examples of the boundary protection. And that's by reports and charts of block threats, along with volume, port information, a whole lot of detail. We can get you reports and charts of a weekly review by your IT team. This is something that we allow you to optionally enable in the system, where you can actually audit and track when people log in and check the system. If that's another piece of evidence that's helpful to show that you're following those processes. You can also get reports of sample block lists created by Cyber Interceptor, which reduces or eliminates the effort for auditors to review firewall policies and logs. Mace, any additional or final thoughts, I guess, about this acceleration of the implementation of these controls? We're talking about very rapid deployment, no hardware, no software, 30 to 60 minutes, getting real rich value within the first 30 days. So any thoughts about this acceleration, the impact on small and medium defense contractors that are looking to meet CMMC Level 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think small and medium DIB members who are trying to meet these requirements really have two issues that I see as a C3PO that are coming up over and over again. One is that they don't have the capacity to implement these controls because they don't understand what is required from the CMMC assessor perspective, and also because they don't have time to focus on those types of things. They need to go and sell their products and build their businesses. So it's that, and it's also the lack of evidence generation. It's two parts. You have to build the control, put it in place, but you also have to provide the evidence of how you're doing that. So those are the two biggest hurdles, and if this product can ease those hurdles, then I think it could help a lot.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And look, those are complex issues for evidence, but those are complex controls to address anyway, and so this automates a lot of that for you. Should save a lot of time and confusion in doing it. A couple of questions coming in. Here's one, Vince. Question about our threat sources.
Well, we don't get into details about the specific threat sources we use for obvious reasons. But as I mentioned earlier, we do use a very wide variety of both public and commercial threat feeds. Some of these, as I said, are used by the largest companies in the world. We're integrating those all together on the back end. We've been doing this historically for the last 8 years, so we have a very significant library of experience in terms of these threat indicators and how things evolve, which enables us to do uh, both the risk scoring and the confidence scoring that we talked about earlier. And then we're also integrating IOCs from different authoritative government sources as those are released. Again, this is a community-based defense model where you're all protected underneath this CyberDome using the Cyber Interceptor product. So the ability to protect everybody with these sources of threat intelligence and provide real value is one of the things that we're really proud of, is how effective this system has been, and in the new developments on this Cyber Interceptor solution that we're launching.
Okay, here's another question. When we get all the time and we all deal with false positives, how do we address that one?
Well, this is a great area. Anybody that's dealt in IT or cybersecurity is very fearful of false positives when it comes to threat intelligence and systems that may block at the perimeter. Pretty much everybody's had that experience of, something getting blocked and their boss yelling at them because they're getting in the way of business actually occurring. And so this is an area where we have a lot of expertise and experience and proven capability. Because of the way we do our threat scoring in terms of threat and confidence, those things that end up being false positives in other systems get pushed down into the lower level of confidence in the scoring. And people aren't blocking at sevens, they're blocking at eights and nines, but they get visibility into the sevens. And so we've had a great track record with the DoD, within healthcare, within state and local government, of implementing these systems, having people be very nervous about false positives, but very quickly learning to trust the system and realizing like this is very well implemented and designed.
Very good. Another question. Foreign adversaries.
Well, this is an area where we have a lot of experience, going back into our history of working with the DoD for almost 8 years now. Plenty of nation state threats are targeting the defense industrial base. We've seen those activities and certainly have a lot of experience working with those. For example, recently we received some indicators related to a foreign adversary, deployed them in the system, and again, within minutes, they were integrated and protecting our customers. And what's really important about that is again, going back to that collective defense, community defense model, getting those indicators from a government source, putting them on our systems, having them deployed in minutes, and protecting everybody without our customers really having to do anything at all is where a lot of the assurance and protection comes into place here. And this is why, the DIB CyberDome name comes in, is we're putting this really good, solid protective dome over the folks that are using this platform.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, Mace, you worked at NVD for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. For 5 years, I was a contractor at the NIST National Vulnerability Database. I'm sure a lot of you know in the security world, NVD receives thousands of vulnerabilities every year that are reported by vendors and other organizations such as MITRE, but they're the CVEs that you always see Nessus or Qualys tying back to. But our team there scored the vulnerabilities, and we scored the infamous shell shock and heartbleed. I think that was from 2014. So that was a lot of fun. I think it's a great source of information for a lot of organizations to kind of understand where their vendors are in terms of the vulnerabilities.
It's interesting. Vulnerability management, we've been around there a long time, but that's maybe getting a little accelerated with Claude Mythos. So, Vince, any comments about that?
Yeah, before I want to loop back to Mace, I think vulnerabilities really stink. It's tough.
It's
Tell us
tough.
about that one vulnerability you discovered.
Yes, there is. If you go to the NVD and search for the phrase user discomfort, you will find one CVE. There is one CVE that was tied to a Bluetooth enabled bidet, and the impact was user discomfort. So, from the CIA triad, we're trying to score it. Is it confidentiality, integrity, or availability? I mean, it could be all three, you know. So, anyway, not everything needs an IP address, is the moral of that story. Thanks for bringing that up, Vince.
Yeah, I need a Bluetooth enabled bidet. Well,
No problem. Go ahead, Vince.
going back to Claude here, NIST, the NVD database, I think there's like 350,000 vulnerabilities in it. There were like 50,000 discovered last year. But just recently, we've seen in the news Claude Mythos and the focus on accelerated vulnerability discovery, which is the term AVD that we're talking about. And I think what's crazy about this Claude Mythos release is that they were training up the next model of this of LLM for coding and programming. This wasn't originally trained up to be a cybersecurity tool, and there's this process within these LLMs called chain of thought evidence. And if you've ever coded, I know you've heard the term vibe coding, that sort of stuff. I use it a lot in terms of coding. But basically what happens is you ask Claude to do something and it starts telling you what it's thinking and what it's doing. And that's that chain of thought evidence. And what happened when they were training this model is that chain of thought got exposed to the scoring systems. So all of a sudden the AI started to realize like what it said in that chain of thought affected how it was scored and graded. And so even though these things aren't alive, it started to behave as if it were alive. It started to it started to cheat. It started to change the game. It started to think more aggressively about how to accomplish the things it was accomplishing. And they discovered that it became very, very good at discovering vulnerabilities in code and fixing vulnerabilities. And it was so good, in fact, that Anthropic, the background of Anthropic is that they spun out of OpenAI. They were security researchers that were focused more on safety and security, and they were uncomfortable with how things were doing. So they started Anthropic. And so in that vein, they kind of put the brakes on Claude Mythos and said, we need to think more seriously about, what's going on here, which led to what's called Project Glasswing, which we've heard in the news, which is a handful of very large companies that, they're focusing on large multinational companies that have a lot of governance, a lot of security control to put Claude Mythos in their hands for vulnerability discovery and see how it works, give them a chance to patch things up. And so it's been fascinating to watch. The end result here is, we've been thinking about a game where, there are vulnerabilities discovered and we have to patch and remediate. And, we're now in a reality, we're now in a future where that's no longer possible. We're never going to be able to patch our way out of where we are. It's just moving way too fast.
And what's the impact of the intersection between Mythos and compliance?
So, I think we all know that the idea that compliance does not equal security. So just because you have, even talking about CMMC level 2 compliance, just because you have CMMC level 2 in place doesn't mean you're completely secure. You still have to pay attention to how you implement these things and manage them. So certainly with this accelerated vulnerability discovery, IT is going to have their hands full with a lot more work in terms of patching vulnerabilities and thinking about how to manage it. But also, the key thing that helps in CMMC around this is this idea of compensating controls. So the idea of patching and vulnerabilities doesn't stand on an island. It can be wrapped in protective measures, like we're talking about here with Cyber Interceptor, where you can actually block and prevent the adversary from accessing the systems that might have vulnerabilities, and therefore you're securing them. And so, these things all kind of go hand in glove. I recommend folks think seriously about how they're implementing CMMC level 2. This isn't just hire the cheapest firm that can do it as fast for you and stamp the books. This is really about using the compliance framework of CMMC level 2 to try to get closer to security and wrapping it around your security measures.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And okay, for the contractors out there, you can see why it's very, very important you start early and start building this audit-ready evidence collection capability, especially for these two controls. Of course, early adopters, you can save some money here. Our standard price for cyber interceptors, $15,000 of firewall per year. And if you register now before October 1, we got a price that we're going to drop it down to $8,000 a year per firewall. So there's a QR code there you can use, or you can click on the link in the chat. And Mace, Vince, thanks for talking. Very good conversation. And thanks to everybody in the audience. See you later.